What is going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. Thank you for joining me for another replay of battle. Today I have a 4 versus 4 for you on my favorite map in the game. This is the ANDUIN River, a map made specifically for 3rd Age Reforged. You will not find its like anywhere else. If you want to play here, I recommend that you go and pick up the mod immediately. This is done on a large unit setting, so these are proper-sized armies. There's some great tactics and outstanding teamwork in this battle, and I think you guys are really going to have a lot of fun with it. So without any further ado, let's get right into the army compositions, then we can jump into the replay itself. But first things first, let's take a look at the army compositions before we get into the battle itself. The first army I have for you today is the forces of Isengard, being commanded by Man of Wan Wei. He's bringing some Dunlending Wild Berserkers, a new unit in .9. They are expendable shock troops with about 15 AP damage and a nice charge bonus to boot. They are extremely vulnerable to missiles and they will die off very quickly in melee, but they can do a fairly decent amount of damage to heavy infantry, so they're worth it for that reason. But make sure you choose your battles carefully with these guys, because you will only get about one engagement out of these guys usually before they are killed off. Beside them we have the Half-Orc Spear Guard, a medium-tier spearman that is new for Isengard in the .9 patch, but is not really all that new of a unit. You can see these guys in DAC. I think they've got about 29 or so defense, making them very reliable at a battle line against medium or lower-tier infantrymen. But against the higher picks in the game, like the Dol Amroth Talon Knights, they will fall apart very quickly, so you need to, again, be very choosy with where you use them. Beside them, we've got a couple units of Dunlending Veterans. These are very cost-effective AP units. They are good against cavalry, as you would expect from the natural enemies of Rohan. They also have a little bit of AP damage and pretty formidable defense stats as well. They make decent line infantry, but they do tend to fall apart because of their lower armor values in the face of missile fire, so you definitely want to keep them sheltered from that if at all possible. Beside them, we have the Wardens of Dunland, who on the surface look extremely similar. In fact, they are identical models, but these guys have better stats than the veterans, and they have 2 HP, which means that they are very, very strong at a battle line. I've seen these guys take down some serious heavy infantry, so it's a nice elite pick for the Isengard force. Beside them, we have the bread and butter of the Isengard faction. These are the Uruk-hai infantry. I think they got a buff in .9, so they've got really formidable attack stats. I think they have about 14 attack, 37 defense, which makes them a very sturdy battle line infantry unit. Beside them, we have the classic, iconic Uruk-hai pikemen. These guys are very strong in .9. Pike units across the board got a big buff, so now from the front, they can make units that have to get in close to deal their damage, like Uruk-hai infantry or the rest of the roster that we've seen so far, pay very heavy costs when attacking their spear walls from the front. So you want to flank these guys, whittle them down with arrows, or if at all possible, hold them in place with an infantry unit, and they come in from the rear for a hammer and anvil strike with your cavalry. Beside them, we've got some Snaga Skirmish. I think there's about 2 units in there that look all sandwiched together. These guys are really efficient javelin men. I think they've got about 14 missile damage, which is not the greatest missile damage out there, but it is AP, and they cost absolutely nothing to bring. I think they're like 250 florins or something like that. Beside them, we have some more AP missiles. These are the Uruk-hai crossbows. Again, another iconic unit that's been in 3rd Age for a really long time. Crossbows are extremely useful in .9 because they can take down heavy infantry and they ignore shield values from the front. So one of the newer kind of mechanics that's being experimented with is that longbow infantry, the standard kind of elven archer and that sort of thing, are a lot more tricky to use. You can't just fire into massed ranks of infantry who are ready and braced and have their shields ready to protect themselves and kill a whole lot of them. You will lose a lot of ammunition that way and not have the same effect that you've had in previous patches. So these crossbows are a nice answer to that. So bows can be used to take down these crossbows, but if you can get your crossbows into an infantry formation, then you can do a lot of damage to them. Firing into an infantry formation, I should say. You don't want to get those guys in melee, they will fall apart. Over here we got some Trolls of the White Hand. Trolls are a little bit less powerful in this. I think they're now considered heavy infantry, although that's apparently a recent development, but although I thought they always were because they could climb up ladders and that sort of thing. But they are vulnerable to cavalry. You don't want to get these guys mowed down by heavy knights. But if you can get them into a flank or into the rear, even better. These guys will do so much work. I think they have probably among the best stats of the Trolls in the .9 patch. Over here we have some Berserkers. These guys have a lot of melee defense, but not a lot of armor. I think they have like either 2 armor or 0 armor. So they are extremely vulnerable to missiles. They have 3 HP. They are, I believe, still AP. So they're a very, very scary unit for flanking attacks against heavy infantry or at a battle line. But again, you want to keep those guys away from any missile fire. Over here we have the Nazgai. These guys have a very competitive armor value. They're essentially upgraded versions of the Berserkers. They've got more HP, more damage, more defense generally across the board, and they're less vulnerable to missiles. Then we have a new unit in the 0.9 patch. In fact, I think this is a brand new unit in general that was created by the Reforged team. These are the Nazgai Bodyguards. This is essentially an upgraded version of the Urukai Bodyguard, who I don't think is still available to Isengard, because why would you take them over the Nazgai? They have, I think, 5 HP. They've got even better stats than the Nazgai unit itself. These guys are super scary. And look at those brutal, like, two-handed, I'm not even sure what you would call that, like swords or Maddox or something. And I think they're also anti-cavalry in addition to AP. So that's a very scary unit. Let's move on now and take a look at the next army. This is the forces of Rohan, being commanded by Examar Tot. He's brought a large number of Airling Swordsmen, Airling X-Men, and I think he's got some Rittermark axes in there as well, to the tune of, I think, about 3 or 4 units of them. He's also bringing Rohan's newly upgraded cavalry. Rohan is a powerhouse in a field battle because their cavalry is so strong. He's got some Royal Guard here. These guys have got a number increase, I believe, up from about 40 or so on large settings, and they have lost their HP, but they've got a few more stats and other things to make up for. They're also anti-armor on the charge and anti-cavalry. Let's also bring some Rohan Nobles. These guys were previously known as Royal Lords. I think they have a 2 HP now instead of like the 6 that the Royal Lords had previously. One of the things that the team in the 0.9 patches tried to do is lower HP across the board so you don't get super units killing armies and that sort of thing. So this iteration of them is much more reasonable. They're still very strong, by far some of the best cavalry in the game. Moving on back here, I think we've got some more Rohirrim units hiding out. We've got some Royal Guard. We've got Helm Hammer is a brand new unit, which I don't think exists outside of Reforged either. These guys are AP. They are essentially a unit that are themed after a great Rohan king known as Helm Hammerhand. They use hammers, even though Hammerhand was known as Hammerhand because I think he punched somebody to death really brutally, which is a very manly way to go. I've also got a couple units here of the Marshals of the Red, 2 HP, heavy shock troops. They're very strong in 0.9. Very expensive though, and I think it's only recent in 0.9 that you can get 2 of them before having a very prohibitive price increase. I can't see the rest. I know he has more cavalry. I think a lot of it is hidden in here, so we'll come back and review that as we can. But I know he's got some Kalinardon Knights, which are a very powerful unit. But when we see them, I'll give you a little bit more of a breakdown. Over here we have Dol Amroth being commanded by yours truly. I brought a couple units of Knights of the Silver Swan. These guys are not as powerful as they used to be in 0.86. They don't have the HP, but they still have very competitive attack and armor values. They're a little bit slow, so you want to be careful in how you use them. They can very easily be outmaneuvered by light and medium cavalry units, so that's something to keep aware of. But if you can get them into a heavy infantry formation or get them charging into some cavalry, they will do a lot of damage. They are also AP on the charge and anti-cavalry. My front line consists of, I think, about 5 units of Dol Amroth men at arms. These guys are very strong in the current 0.9 iteration. They've got about 43 defense and like 13 attack or something like that, making them among the best kind of standard line infantry in the game. They're a little bit more expensive than, say, Gondor infantry, costing about 50 florins more, and they have a lot less numbers. I think the Gondor infantry has about 30 men on this unit, so it balances out in that way. But pound for pound, these guys can do a lot of damage. They're very, very useful. Out front, I've got some Tier Thair marksmen. As I said, archers have been reworked in this patch, so they're not going to be able to just take on infantry formations from the front if those units are heavily armored and shielded. They're good against halberds, they're good against other archers, good against crossbows, as I mentioned earlier, but you want to be careful with how you use them. These guys are particularly good for that reason because they are very heavily armored, meaning that it's not easy for other skirmishers to take these guys down. They can soak up a lot of fire and deal a reasonable amount of damage in return with I believe, about 8 missile damage, and most of the like really heavy elite archers tend to have between like 8 and 10 armor, so they're competitive for that reason alone. And behind them, I've got some Tarnostian Guard, another new unit for Dol Amroth, who is in fact a new faction in case you guys weren't aware. They're not exactly amazing at the moment, but they do make up for it by having a lot of numbers and not really costing a whole lot to bring in. It cost about 500 florins to bring this unit, and they are anti-cavalry as well, as you'd expect from spearmen. Over here I have a unit. This is a unit of Haven Guard, I should say. This is one of my elite picks. They have 3 HP, a ton of defense, and a ton of damage. These guys are so strong, and they're going to be extremely important in this battle. I think that's basically it for my force, except that I've got a Trebuchet hiding around here somewhere. Out in front of the Trebuchet is my Nimrodel Rangers, one of the few archer units that still has AP, which means they are very good for picking a target and assassinating it from range. Good at sniping generals, good at sniping heavy cavalry, for example, who have lost a lot of their HP. These guys are so useful and so strong that you don't want to use their ammunition on anything that isn't a very high-value target. Just a quick word here on trebuchets, and you guys are going to see it in a moment, so I won't waste too much time with it. But trebuchets have got a massive increase in their range and in their accuracy. Well, a light increase in accuracy, but mostly they have a very hefty increase in their range. Moving on over here, we have a faction that has got a massive facelift. This is Dale being commanded by Boris Beetle. He's bringing some Barding Herd who are now extremely strong. In previous iterations, the Barding Herd were a little bit worthless. They would lose to just about anything. But now, if they are in defensive formation and they can get their enemy stuck on their halberds in the front, these guys are so deadly. Over here we have some Dale Swordmasters. Previously these guys were AP, but now they have lost that ability, but they've gotten more attack and defense. They've still got HP, but they are quite vulnerable to missiles because I don't think they have a ton of armor. Out in front, we've got some Avari Elder Pikemen. It's good to see that Dale is still hung on to these units. These make a very viable alternative to this pike unit over here, the Lake Town Pikemen. These guys have a lot more armor, a lot more damage, probably still one of the best pike units in the game, but they don't have a ton of numbers, so you need to be careful with how you deploy them. A catapult shot in the middle of these guys is going to be a loss that is dearly, dearly felt. But speaking of the Lake Town Pikemen, we have a unit of them right here. They are pretty decent medium pikemen. I think they've got like 17 defense, most of which is tied up in either their armor or more predominantly their melee defense, and their pike units, so of course they're good against cavalry, good against holding down infantry. As I mentioned earlier, pikes are now very strong from the front against melee infantry. In behind, we've got a unit of catapults, and behind them a brand new unit created, I believe, by Sin of the Dark Cloud. These are the Dale Dragon Slayers, one of the few units that still have AP missiles. I think there is a stipulation with their firing arc in that they cannot usually fire over allied troops unless they have a very clear line of sight. For example, if these guys were on the slope of a hill and there was an infantry formation down at the bottom, they would be able to fire over them. But generally, these guys aren't able to fire in indirect arcs. They need to fire straight on, but they do a ton of damage. I think they also fire ballista bolts, if you can believe it. They're very, very strong. But that just about does it for Dale. No, he's actually got some hidden cavalry in here. Dale Earls, who have gotten a big, big buff. They've got now 50 or 51 defense, a ton of damage. They're also anti-cavalry or anti-armor on the charge, and they're anti-cavalry generally, as most cavalry tend to be. These guys are so much better than they used to be. You're going to see them used to great effect in this battle. But that does it for the attacking team. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at the defenders entrenched on the other side of the Anduin. The first defensive army that I want to show you today is the Corsairs of Umbar. These guys are a brand new faction in 0.9, and they hail from their eponymously named haven in the southern eastern portion of Middle-earth. These guys are actually the inheritors of the Numenorian legacy of conquest. They are a sister kingdom to Gondor, having both come from the island of Old Numenor. These guys, though, they serve Sauron, and they are very, very deadly with their infantry. They tend to lack cavalry, and one of the few picks that they have, you can see before you, these are the Warlords of Umbar. They generally serve as a bodyguard for the Umbar generals, so they've got more HP than your standard cavalry unit. I think they've got about 2 or 3. They're also very expensive, and you can only bring one of them before a very quick price increase takes place. They've got really nice melee and defense stats as well, so they are very, very deadly, especially on the charge where they are AP and anti-cavalry. Down here we've got some Corsair Savages. These units work essentially along the same lines as the Dunlending Wild Berserkers. They've got 0 armor, in fact, but they are locked morale, very cheap, and have a ton of damage and a big charge bonus as well, all of which is AP. These guys can shred heavy infantry. You don't usually want to leave them unsupported because of their low armor values. They will fall apart very quickly. They also don't have a lot of melee defense stats, making them very vulnerable in melee combat to other infantry units. They're mostly used for their shock value and for the fact that they are so very cheap. Down in front, we've got a couple units of merchants. There's a new kind of system in 0.9 that allows a lot of factions that are cavalry light to have access to these very formidable melee cavalry units. They're about medium tier. They've got about 29 defense and like 17 attack. They're also AP on the charge and anti-cavalry. They will not stand up to professional horsemen, very, very well. So, for example, Dol Amroth or Rohan, who we saw earlier, will shred these guys in close combat. So you want to use them mainly as a support force or to defend yourself from incoming cavalry attacks, holding them down to allow you to get in with either your Warlords of Umbar or your Corsair Savages or other units that you can use to repel a cavalry attack. So they're reliable in that sense, but don't expect them to kill a whole lot of other heavy cavalry units by themselves. Down here we got some Corsair Fencers, a brand new unit in 0.9. These guys have 40 damage. It is AP. We've got a ton of melee defense as well, so you do not want to engage these guys in melee combat if you can help it. They don't have a lot of armor, and they do have multiple HP. They cost about 1,000 to bring. I think they're also able to hide very, very easily in like light scrub or in trees, for example. So you can use them as an ambush unit. There's also it's a very difficult trade-off, and you have to be very careful with how you use it. If you put these guys in a loose formation, form them up into a square, and soak up a cavalry charge, cavalry will usually charge right through them. You'll take some casualties, but the cavalry will end up surrounded, and you'll be able to cut them down very, very quickly. It works best against cavalry units that don't have a lot of HP, so you can side through them very quickly and then move on to your next target. Over here we have some Beligear Footmen, medium spearmen. They're reliable at the battle line. They're not amazing though, so don't rely on them to fight elite infantry or other stronger heavy infantrymen. They're useful, of course, for fighting cavalry, so you can use them to support your cavalry forces like those merchants over there, which is something you're really going to have to pay attention to when you play as Umbar, because you are vulnerable to cavalry. Over here we have the Castamir's Chosen. These guys have been around for a very long time in Reforged. I think the model originally comes from DAC, but they have got a lot more power in this version, if you can believe it. They have lost their AP. Generally, AP has been confined to a certain sort of subsect of units, but they've got a little bit more attack, and they've got more HP. You can bring them, I think, for about 900 apiece. They've got 3 HP, and you can get 2 of them before a price increase. So they're very, very useful as a core of your infantry force. Over here we have a brand new unit. These are the Beligear Halberds. Halberds in general have made a comeback in the 0.9 patch. A lot more units now have access to them, whereas previously I think like the Dwarves and maybe most of the Orcus factions had halberds. Now Dol Amroth and the faction of Umbar has them as well. They're very strong against cavalry, against armor, and from the front, which means that you can use them to lock down portions of the battlefield, choke points for example, and use the rest of your army to maneuver around them while being fairly secure in the knowledge that these guys will hold for a very long time. They've got great morale, and as I mentioned, are very strong against infantry and cavalrymen. They are extremely weak, however, to missiles, most of their defense being bound up in their melee defense stat. So a counter to these guys is just mass volley missile fire. Over here we've got some Abrazani Nardubawi, which is a mouthful to say. These guys were previously AP archers. They're a little bit more expensive than some of the other archers that Umbar has available to them, such as the Beligear archers. They're a lot more able to stand up to missile fire, for example. They're a nice kind of shadowy counterpart to the Tirthair marksmen in my army. Over here we've got some Beligear archers. They're a lot more numerous than the Abrazani Nardubawi, but they are not nearly as strong. These are more of a low to medium tier archer that you can use just for massed volley fire to counter, say, some halberds, for example. We've got a couple other units in here as well. I think a lot of them are hidden, but I will point them out to you as the battle progresses. But over here we've got some Naru Royal Archers. These are the cream of the crop when it comes to archers. I think the only thing that maybe they can be outclassed by is the Hashari archers, who are now actually have a mounted version, so enjoy that. But I think the Hashari got moved over to Harad, so disregard that entirely. In any case, the Naru Royal Archers have a lot of HP, they've got a lot of armor, they're also pretty decent in melee after the fact as well. And I think they've got AP, although don't quote me on that one. Elsewhere in their army, I know that they've got a couple of units of the Castamir's Harbingers. You can't see them. They look very, very similar to the Castamir's Chosen, except that they've got very, very vicious-looking kind of troll helmets on them, like something you'd see out of Skyrim. And they've got two scimitars like this, and a ton of damage, and 3 HP as well. So Umbar is really a powerhouse when it comes to close quarters combat. I think they even rival the Dwarves, believe it or not, except they're a little bit faster. Over here we have one of the 2 runic armies. This is being commanded by Pasternak. He's got some light infantry clansmen here. These guys are not very strong, but they're extremely cheap. They cost about 100 to bring, and I think, in my mind, their biggest draw is not just their numbers, but the fact that they can drop stakes. So you can use these guys to create sort of field fortifications for your archers or for your artillery, for example, in order to defend them from cavalry charges. Over here we have one of the Dragonskin units. These are the Lok Gamp Rim. They count, I believe, as pikemen, so they're very strong from the front. They've got a lot of numbers, not as good as some of the other pikemen in the game, such as the Avari pikes, for example, will generally soundly beat these guys, but their numbers, their sheer numbers and their pretty decent armor values make them a competitive pick for your runic army if you have need of pikes. Over here we've got some Loke Flag Rim. These guys are so good. I think you can take like 4 of them before you get a price increase, 4 or 5 of them even, and they cost maybe about 700 to 750 to bring. They are AP, great at smashing apart other units from their tier. They can also do a reasonable amount of damage to elites, but do not expect them to carry the day. These guys can be beaten down very, very badly by elites, and especially units that have a high melee defense. These guys are really kind of incapable in the face of units like the elves, for example. The elven elites have a lot of melee defense, which makes them very hard to take down in combat. But against other line infantry, or against some of the Dol Amroth units that generally have less defense because they have shields, like melee defense because they have shields, these guys will serve you very, very well. In behind we have some Clan Warriors. It's kind of a hit or miss with these guys. You can take them for the same price as Clan Guard, and I generally favor the Clan Guard. You can actually see a unit of them over here because they're AP and anti-cavalry, but these guys are not good, not too bad for the numbers that they bring, and they've also got fairly decent attack values as well. So they're more of a support infantry to give you a little bit of extra numbers if you need to hold a certain area for a very long time. But speaking of the Clan Guard, we've got a unit of them right here. Again, another really nice support force. They're quite fast, so they can keep pace with some of your armored cataphract units, for example, in order to lend them a little bit of an edge in a cavalry engagement. They're also very cheap, too, costing, again, 500 gold to bring. Over here, we have the best spearmen available to Rune. These are the Loke Scion Rim. These guys are so good at what they do. These kind of heavy spearmen will hold for a very long time. They will not kill a lot of other high-tier infantry. They don't have the greatest melee values, but they can hold up for a very long time with their 2 HP and high armor and high shield values. Over here we have a couple of the range contingents from Pasternak. These are the Loknar Rim, a really nice pick. They are long-ranged, very long-ranged in fact. Competitive missile damage. They are not great in melee. It's very easy to rout these guys with cavalry, for example, even light cavalry. But yeah, as long as you keep them away from other infantry units and from other cavalry, they will serve you very, very well. They're also not very expensive either. I don't know if I mentioned it. I think they cost about 650 to bring. Over here we have a unit of Kamul Shadowbows. These guys are essentially an upgraded version of the Loknar Rim. They can hide anywhere, making them very useful for ambushes. They've got good missile damage. I think they have about 10. And they've got competitive melee and defensive stats as well, which means you can throw them to the battle line once they've expended their arrow clutches, and they will hold their own with the big boys. In behind, we've got some Variag Raiders. It's good to see that these guys didn't get shifted over to the new Khan faction, which by and large has picked up most of the Variag units from Rune. These guys are pretty cheap to bring, and they've got decent missile damage, and of course they're very, very quick, swift, making them useful for harassment. And behind them we got some more Clan Guard and some Clan Hunters. Light Archers don't really do a whole lot, nothing too special about them, but they are very cheap to bring. So if you're short on funds and you need some massed volley fire to counter whatever it happens to be, the Clan Hunters are your go-to. Over here we have the cream of the Runic Infantry, or the Runic Cavalry crop. These guys are the Loke Inas Rim. Very strong cataphracts, competitive, definitely a match for my Swan Knights. In behind we have some bodyguards who share the same unit, but they've got extra HP and more damage and other things like that. Over here we have some Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen. These guys are so good. They've got multiple HP, really high attack values, double scimitars, which they use to attack very quickly. These guys are beasts in close quarters combat, and they've got decent armor value as well. You can see them very heavily armored there with that beautiful golden runic armor. And of course we got another unit of Lokamp Rim Spearmen in the back here. One little note, just something to keep in mind that I've noticed a lot lately, is that the bannermen tend to not be as fast as the rest of the unit, so your bannermen will get left behind, but that's sort of a minor detail. Moving on over here, we have the forces of Arnor. Arnor is a powerhouse in this. A lot of their units, right, I think they're going to get changed in a upcoming patch, but at the moment, a lot of their units are very, very cost-effective. These Dunedain Knights here, for example, very strong, multiple HP infantry, don't cost a whole lot to bring. Got some Dunedain Wardens over here. They're essentially the same as they were in 0.86. They have multiple HP, not very expensive. They're nice medium spearmen. Up here we have a brand new unit. These are the Arnor Gate Guards, and look at these guys. They're very, very sexy. They look like they were based on the Guards of Osgiliath model, by and large, but they've got those beautiful little masks right there, which you typically see on like Fountain Guard units. So you can definitely see these guys as being a very elite defensive force for important Arnorian strongholds like Anuminas, for example. They are very strong from the front, probably some of the best pikes in the game. I don't think they have multiple HP, though, so they are very vulnerable to javelins and missile fire and incoming artillery fire, of course. Kingdom of Arnor. Also, it's being commanded by Samwise the Brave. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to skip over the name. But he's bringing a trebuchet. Very good pick. Look at this. Up here, this thing can do so much work against anybody that tries to ford that river. He's also got some bodyguards. These are multiple HP cavalry units. Very, very strong. Definitely a competitive cavalry unit that's, even if you don't have your general in there, they're very, very strong and worth it to bring. He's also bringing a unit of Knights of Anuminos, who are extremely strong in this patch. 50 or so defense, multiple HP. Very, very good. They cost a lot, though. It's like $12.50 or something to bring one unit. So make sure you take care of them. Over here we got some Arnor Men-at-Arms. These are essentially the fodder unit. They're more or less the equivalent of the Gondor Men-at-Arms. They will not really kill very much, but they've got the numbers and the defense to hold for a very long time. And against like lighter units, like militia tier units, or other units that are similarly priced and statted, these guys can do fairly decent. Over here we have the Dunedain Bodyguard. These guys were previously the Dunedain Steel Bowmen. Now they are a bodyguard unit. You will only be able to bring one of them. They are very strong, a lot of range, and I think they have AP missiles as well. Over here we have some Arnorian archers. Very, very light archers. Not the strongest, but again, very useful for volley fire. Now you can't see them because they can hide just about anywhere, but there are some Dunedain Troll Slayers here, and I will explain a little bit more when we see them. Over here we got some dismounted Arthedain Knights. These guys are so good. They cost 700 florins, and they are essentially better than the Gondorian equivalent, that being the Winged Swordsmen, who we won't be seeing in this battle, but they have very similar stats to them, a little bit better, in fact. So the dismounted Arthedain Knights are a force to be reckoned with. I think that's basically it, unless I'm missing something there. There should be one more runic force hanging out, I think, right over here across the river. Yes, this is the Kingdom of Rune being commanded by Woodhouse. He's brought some clan crossbowmen, very efficient crossbowmen, but quite lightly armored though. So you want to make sure that you protect these guys, try and keep them out of range of enemy archers if at all possible, which isn't really all that viable of a strategy with clan crossbowmen because of their short range. But they, if you can defend them well enough and use them effectively against infantry formations, these guys can shred heavy infantry that are much more expensive than they are. He's also bringing some Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen. These guys are a brand new unit as well in 0.9. They're crossbowmen and they fire, I think, like ballista bolts or something like that. Like, they're brutal. They do a lot of damage, as you'd expect from a low number unit like this. They've also got multiple HP and they're strong in melee after you use them. Oh, I love these guys. I'm so happy to be able to show them off today. These are the Camel's Chosen. They're essentially an upgraded version of the Loke Flag Rim, but they've got multiple HP. Like, beautiful defense stats, something like 42 or 45 or something like that. And they are very, very strong with their attack values as well, so they can shred other infantry units. They tend to fall apart in the face of like super heavies or like really, really nicely HP'd shock troops like the dwarves have access to, but still, Camel's Chosen, not a bad pick at all, though quite expensive. Woodhouse is also bringing some very high graders. In behind, he's got, oh, I love it, both of the brand new silver units for Rune that really stand out in their army roster. This is the Camel's Dragon Knights, and I think this is where his general is hanging out as well. You can actually see the bodyguard there for Camel the Easterling, straight out of the Hobbit movie. These guys are very strong, heavy cavalry. They are not as good as some of Rohan's cavalry, for example, so don't overestimate their abilities. But against most of the cavalry in the game, these guys will shred them. They got multiple HP, really high attack and defense values. Of course, they are AP on the charge and anti-cavalry. In behind them, we've got another new unit for Rune. These are kind of more of a cannon fodder unit, but a little bit better than, say, the Arnor Men-at-Arms or the Gondorian infantry, for example. They cost about 500 to bring. They've got 25 defense and like 12 damage, so they've got better damage than most of the other kind of throwaway units like this available to Gondor and Arnor, but they've got less defense. They're also quite quick, and they've got really good numbers as well. In behind, we got some more Loke Scion Rim, some Loke Gamp Rim, and I love these guys, the Camel's Shadow Guard. These guys are anti-armor, anti-cavalry. They can hide anywhere, making them very good at setting up ambushes. In fact, I've used these guys to great effect to ambush and entrap cavalry and really inflict some serious damage upon your opponents in the early game. If you use these guys on a wing, for example, hide them there and like extend, you know, a juicy target, for example, some archers work great for this, then you can ambush any units that move in and try and silence your archers, which usually tends to be cavalry. Woodhouse is also bringing some Loke Flag Rim, and I think he's got an artillery piece in here as well, although I could be wrong about that. But that basically does it for the army compositions. I know, a lot of stuff to take in. There's a lot of new dynamics in the .9 patch, so I hope you guys enjoyed that little brief breakdown of all the units. I tried to give you the best information I could. But in any case, let's move on now to the replay, and I hope you guys enjoy it. So the battle's going to get kicked off with a big artillery volley here, and just look at the range on that trebuchet. It's so crazy. You can't even see my trebuchet. It's just hidden behind the tree line over there, and we're still able to fire on these guys and reap a terrible, bloody toll amongst their ranks. One of the biggest problems, I think, for the runic position here is that, or the runic and Umbar position here, is that they are not able to fire back. Oh man, look at that volley right there, taking out a lot of those shadow bows. That's a very, very important, very expensive unit to lose in that fashion. But since they do not have any artillery to counter us, we want to just inflict maximum damage on them before we are going to be obliged to move across the river and continue our assault. What we don't want them to do is to move any farther back. So if they were to, for example, just say, you know, forget this, I'm going to fall back right behind here. I'm going to give up all that ground and prevent any more artillery shots from coming into my forces. That's fair enough, but we would move things forward to try and get them to come out here and fight us. And right now they've got a really nice defensive position as well, so it's difficult to want to abandon this. They've got both of their flanks protected on either side by these cliffs. The only real danger that they're facing right now is that trebuchet, so it's a bit of a trade-off there, and it looks like the Umbar runic forces have opted instead to stay here. Of course, if they were to move farther back, they would be exposing essentially their back flank to us, allowing us to potentially overrun them in this pass here, although they do have an opportunity by stationing some forces up here. But ultimately, our strategy is to just do a lot of damage to these guys, put a lot of pressure on them, and then oblige some of their allies' troops to move in and try and relieve some of that pressure. So we really want to pull some Arnor or Rune's forces off this area. Look at this, you can just see a very formidable choke point forming up here. This is not something that our allies are really going to want to attack head on, especially not as Rohan in a predominantly infantry fight. It's hard for them to bring their cavalry to bear on a position such as this. So they're definitely at a disadvantage. So we want to weaken this as much as possible and in order to allow them to make a breakthrough. But otherwise things are going to be really quiet over here. So for the most part, we're going to focus on the battle as it unfolds in this area. You can see some more artillery fire going in to the front of these lines. Oh man, they actually it seems like they miss, but there's some hidden units back here, and you can see that they have now been reduced to little piles of ash by the incoming artillery fire. Yeah, more and more shots pouring in, looking to just get a piece of anything that we can. Oh, those shadow bows just narrowly missed another fireball to the face. Yeah, let's fast forward just a little bit. You can see that Dale has taken a position on the other side of this river. At this point, I was telling my ally that he needed to pull back because Rune and Umbar are moving up their bows, and these pikemen are extremely vulnerable to that kind of missile fire. So they're going to fall back, hopefully very soon here, without losing too many of their forces. But there is an opportunity for Umbar, because these pikemen are going to be very slow, and they're not going to be able to retreat all the way across. They're not going to be able to, like, say, break formation and run, because that would leave this catapult vulnerable and that back flank open. So they could potentially move up some of their cavalry at this point and be very, very aggressive, but remove an artillery piece from the board, which would be a very big boon for them and a great win in the long term. You can see those archers now just pouring fire into these poor Dale pikemen. They have no response to it. My ally is just sitting here taking it. See some counter artillery fire going out there. It's just not going to be enough. Yeah, a few of those Belly Gear archers may go down. You can see my ally just realizing, yeah, this isn't worth it. I'm telling him to move back as well, so he's going to start to fall back across the river. At the same time, he's actually moving up some of his Lake Town bowmen, potentially to have a bit of a skirmish fight here. Also, I think that the presence of these Lake Town bowmen is not a bad thing either, because he hasn't moved his catapult back yet. So it's at least worth it to have a unit between his squishy catapult and anything else that the runic player can throw at them. Oh man, so got another nice hit there. I think that's the Loke Rim. Indeed it is, carving off a corner of that unit. Rune is just suffering so heavily right now at the hands of our artillery pieces. Umbar's not going to take it on the chin, though. You can see, oh, another big hit there. I think someone just got massacred. Oh, more of those shadow bows going down. But Umbar, rather, is not going to take it on the chin. They're moving forward with their merchants, probably looking to get a piece of those Lake Town bows and even that catapult. Yeah, Dale is definitely in a compromising situation here. He needs to fall back with those bowmen and with those longbows. So I think we're hidden before, so we missed them in their army compositions. But he needs to get them out of there because that cavalry is bearing down on them. I can see what's happening, so I'm going to begin to break off some of my Knights of the Silver Swan and try and get them over there as quickly as possible, but they're not going to be able to get there fast enough. If those cavalry want to commit, there's nothing that I can do to stop them at this point, other than the presence of my skirmishers all along this this far bank here. Actually, it looks like the Variag Raiders are now leading the way, looking to put a little bit of fire into those Lake Town bows as they retreat. You can see a lot of Lake Town lives have been lost in that initial kind of poke and prod at the defending forces' defensive lines. Yeah, things not looking too great. We can't afford exchanges like that. We only managed to kill a few of their archers and lost a lot, probably 50 or so of our men in return. So we're going to have to be a little bit more careful in the future, though we have brought their cavalry forward to bear. So at this point we were thinking, what can we do to get that cavalry to commit? How can we do it? And luckily, Examartot is going to provide us with a solution. You can see him coming in now with some of his Royal Guard. These guys are very strong, very good against fighting other cavalry units, as you would expect from a faction famed for its knightship as Rohan. Examartot is now bringing in his Royal Guard, and I think we're going to see some pretty significant action here soon. But at the moment, we're content just to sit back, bombard these guys. Those poor Narnar Royal Archers taking a fireball to the face. You can see another shot coming in here. I wonder if it's going to get anything. Oh, it's so high. Oh, that's right. There's still some hidden units back there. That is brutal. You can see a lot of the cataphracts actually have gone down. In fact, the horsemen were the hidden unit, and they've taken a lot of casualties because of that. Oh, is it going to get them? No, it's going to go just over them. Enough to scare them a little bit, though. I think some of these horse archers actually got caught up in there as well. Very unfortunate for them. So far, our catapults and our trebuchets have more or less paid for themselves. They've done a lot of damage and are obliging our enemies here to fall back into this little cliff face. Previously, they were a little bit farther forward, which might have been a problem for us if we decided to ford the river. They could easily surround us. But these artillery pieces have really proved their worth, not just in the damage they can do to their army, but in the way that we can force these guys out of position, out of a defensive position that would be harder for us to break through, and sort of allowing us to dictate the terms of the engagement a little bit more. So it's really useful to bring artillery in point 9, if only for that reason. Let's take a look at what's going on over here. It looks like some of the Variag Raiders actually have moved across the river. Initially, Woodhouse fell back with his entire runic force across the river, but it looks like those Variags here are in the area to potentially contest the field with these Rohan bodyguards. And let's slow it down just a little bit here, since some of the new cavalry units have now been exposed. Although, whoa, what do we got here? Oh, never mind. That's his ally. Okay, so one way has actually moved his berserkers over as well. But the unit I wanted to take a quick look at is the Kalanardhan Knights. These guys, they're getting a nerf in a new patch because they are honestly too strong as they are right now. They can butcher everything. They can even take on pikes from the front, which is insane for a cavalry unit. So in this particular battle, this unit is very high value. So there's going to be a lot of eyes turned towards them, not all of them friendly. If Rune or Arnor, for example, who has a trebuchet, can get a hold of these guys, that is a very expensive unit that would be lost. But they've got, I think, 3 HP in this particular battle, and ridiculous melee stats. They've also got AP just generally, and they're anti-cavalry. So they chew apart cavalry, they chew apart infantry, they just kill everything, and it's glorious to watch. Looks like over here, Examartot has moved his cavalry across the river, looking to pick a fight with the runic forces. You can see the Locaenas Rim now charging downhill. Examartot is going to deny them that engagement. He's trying to sucker them out of position here. It's a nice little feint by Examartot. We want to draw these cataphracts forward. We want to draw the rest of their cavalry forward, because that's one of the things that we really want to focus on our side of the river in this particular situation, is the presence of all of this cavalry. If we can destroy them, then that's going to leave us a lot of opportunity to maneuver, and it's going to protect our flanks and our infantry once we move them across the river from a devastating charge from these heavily armored cataphracts. Oh, nice shot. Oh, another nice shot there, taking out some Beliar archers. Just so much artillery moving forward. We've managed to pull them out of position. Now we're going to punish them for it with some well-timed artillery fire. Examartot now moving back in. You can see he's trying to get a piece of those Locaenas Rim. The bodyguard regiment moving in at the same time. Oh, they are actually going to connect this time. Look at that. Looks like the Kingdom of Rune is starting to surround these Royal Guard. At the same time, you can see some reinforcements coming in, which is going to maybe prevent them from doing that. A big artillery strike there. Brutal, taking down some of those bodyguard, a very high-value unit. They have a lot of HP, and they're very expensive. You don't want to lose them that way, and now they are, in fact, shaken. So Rohan has given us the opportunity that we need. You can see more of Umbar's cavalry now coming forward. These merchants have been moving around a lot. They're now winded, so not quite so swift as they used to be. Looks like they want to pick a fight with these Lake Town bowmen, but they're going to think better of it. You can see some reinforcements coming in from Dol Amroth. This is myself bringing in my 2 regiments of Knights of the Silver Swan. These guys are really strong heavy cavalry, so those merchants are actually going to swing back around and attack these Royal Guard from behind. You can see more and more artillery fire coming in. We're really trying to get these guys to bunch up so we can just nuke them from afar and neutralize their cavalry. Those Rohan Guard not really liking the situation that they're in. They're going to try and retreat. That one unit, having taken almost complete and total casualties, now combat ineffective at a mere 8 men left in the unit. This one is looking much, much sturdier, though. 33 men still left in the unit. At the same time, my reinforcements are coming in. Big charge coming in to the... this is the bodyguard, actually. So Rune is definitely in some trouble here. Doesn't want to lose his general. And my Knights of the Silver Swan are going to charge in there and just hammer these guys. You can see they've got a big advantage. There's some bow fire coming in, which is a little bit dangerous. Most of my Knights, however, are essentially impervious to bow fire. They've got enough armor to withstand that arrow fire. Trying to trap them. Exmartok coming in with his Royal Guard, getting these guys nice and a nice and juicy charge into the front of those bodyguard and the Locate Ines Rim. Elsewhere, you can see some of the Dalian cavalry, one of the units I think we missed because they were hiding, have now charged into battle against those merchants. They have done so much damage to them. Look at this. I think we might actually see the merchants rout here, and indeed, some of them have. We're going to follow that up with a charge now and a surround from Boris Beetle on both sides now. My Knights of the Silver Swan charging in, trying to support my ally. We've managed to get a big piece of those cataphracts. They are just stuck in there. This is disastrous for the defending team's cavalry. Though luckily they've managed to move in with some belly gear footmen. These spears are not particularly powerful, but they do have a bonus versus cavalry, so they are going to move in and try and help out the cataphracts if they can. They actually just took a big shot from that the fiery ammunition, which is going to cause them morale problems. A charge in the flank now from my Knights of the Silver Swan. These guys are in danger of routing. This is a desperate situation for them. Dale now bringing in his Earls. He's actually brought them in and around from the other side, coming through my my side of the choke point. Coming in with his Earls, a very timely charge. This is my Knights of the Silver Swan. We're really starting to flag in the face of those bodyguard. We've managed to get some reinforcements in there. Rout not only those belly gear footmen, but look at this. These bodyguard are thinking about running away as well. Elsewhere, my Knights of the Silver Swan, looks like they just bit the face off of these Corsair Savages, now trying to retreat, but unfortunately routing right through a unit of belly gear footmen, and unfortunately they're going to lose a reasonable amount of troops in there. But there's more and more arrow fire coming in from the longbowmen and the Lake Town bowmen from Dale. You can see a lot of damage being done to these lightly armed and armored units here, now getting shot from the rear. Elsewhere, we've managed to break those cataphracts, completely destroying them. We're going to charge into these merchants, going to oblige them to flee. This is exactly what we want. There is nowhere for these guys to go. Just watch what happens. These merchants going to try and save themselves, running panically into their own pikes, their spears, whatever these are called. Very unfortunate for their cavalry. So now we have essentially nullified any horsemen that they have, and we're looking on doing the same to some of their infantry regiments. You can see these belly gear footmen here just got routed, I believe, by these Dalian cavalry. These light cavalry are just such a pain. In point 9, it really seems like the meta is shifting in favor of light and medium cavalrymen who can be very swift and exploit gaps in enemy formations and take advantage of the slowness of heavy cavalry such as the Earls or my Knights of the Silver Swan. But unfortunately for them, they've got caught out by those Warlords of Umbar. Not a fight that they're going to win. Their maneuverability serves them no purpose in close combat against these heavy cavalry. I'm going to move in, sacrifice what remains of my one unit of Knights of the Silver Swan to try and knock some of the HP off of this Warlord unit. So far, not so great. They haven't really managed to accomplish anything. I think we might kill one of them. Yeah, we managed to take down one of the Warlords of Umbar. Maybe deal a little bit of HP damage to this unit, sufficiently weakening it for later in the battle. But let's slow it down for just a second here. You can see that this has been a devastating defeat for the defending team's cavalry. Rohan came in. Rohan doesn't really have a lot to do with their cavalry at this point because of the way this map is set up. So they've moved in. We've suckered their infantry out of position. We've suckered their cavalry out of position. Rune essentially has no horses left. Umbar is the only one with a cavalry force that's remaining, and they have just a single unit of Warlords of Umbar, which they don't want to sacrifice. Well, these Dalian Earls now going to get charged in the rear by these Warlords of Umbar. At the same time, Boris Beetle coming in from the rear with his Dalian cavalry. Going to pin these guys down. There's actually arrow fire coming in. Some slow units of Beligrif have been marching towards that engagement, but I don't think it's going to be enough and in time to save the Warlords of Umbar. Looks like Dale is actually going to fall back from that engagement. Probably very smart. At the same time, you can see some fireballs coming in from our artillery batteries, looking to take advantage of the fact that these units are so bunched up like this. If we can hit these Warlords of Umbar with one of those artillery shots, for example, that would be fantastic. But while all of this chaos is going on, we decided that we were going to take advantage of the disorganization and the shock that Umbar and Rune must be experiencing, given the loss of their cavalrymen unexpectedly. So with that in mind, we've moved across the river in force now. You can see a lot of my very important elite units here. I've got my Haven Guard, I've got my Dolaim Men-at-Arms, I've got some spears to hold down the line in case they move in with their Warlords of Umbar, and I've got some marksmen across the way as well. I've still got a nice reserve force over here. I've got some White Knights who I think I missed into the introduction. I think they might have been hiding or something like that. I just didn't see them. These guys are 2 HP, very strong cavalry, more or less a match for the Earls, but a little bit underwhelming, I think, for a faction that's supposed to be predominantly known for its heavy cavalry, like its Swan Knights, for example. But anyway, I've also got some Dolaim Men-at-Arms and some Tarnostian Guard. There's nothing that's getting across here that's very fast, that's going to be able to penetrate through my spearmen or through the spikes that I've set up. So I think Dale is doing the same. You can see that he's begun to move across with his infantry. The Lake Town pikemen now back for some revenge, forming a defensive line here, allowing the Earls to fall back in behind them. He's also brought up some more of his bowmen, and I've fallen back my Knights of the Silver Swan here. Still very healthy with 30 men left in the unit to defend this line from any nasty surprises, such as the Kingdom of Arnor moving over and trying to help out their allies. Which, by the way, they are in the process of doing. You can see that Arnor has now been obliged to move some of their infantry over to try and help Rune, because they are doubtlessly calling for aid at this point, now that we've wiped out their cavalry. They're bringing in some Arnor Men-at-Arms, some of their dismounted Dunedain Knights, actually no, the dismounted Arthedain Knights, and some of their Dunedain Wardens alongside their bodyguard. So that's a pretty substantial commitment from Arnor, and a loss that I think is going to be sorely felt over on this choke point here, where Rune is holding down the fort once the assault begins. And speaking of, let's take a quick look at the order of battle for my allies here. You can see that they've moved into this little canyon here, getting themselves ready and in position to begin to take the fight to Rune. And in fact, I think they're beginning to move forward now. You can see Isengard beginning to make some initial forays here with their crossbowmen. I think they might be a little bit worried about the presence of cavalry in the woods, which is always a scary thing on this map. If you've seen one of the tournament battles we did here, that was something that we used to great effect, was these woods and all of the scrubs. So you definitely got to be careful when advancing through forest land like this, because people love to hide things over here. And this is where Rune deployed initially, so I think that their caution right now is definitely well warranted. Let's move back over here to the front lines. You can see battle lines have begun to be established. I've locked down this area with my Dolaim Men-at-Arms. Nothing's going to push through there very easily. I've also moved up with my Tarnostian Guard in order to form more or less a battle line over here in this wooded area. I moved up with my skirmishers. I think we're starting to take some shots over here at the Beligir halberds and their spearmen and their archers and things like that. All of these very soft targets, very easy for units with high missile damage, or reasonably high missile damage in any case, like the Tirithera marksmen, to gun down with impunity. You can see Pasternak now moving forward with some of his Balkov tribesmen. Actually, I didn't see these guys earlier either. These are AP javelins, very cheap, costing I think about 350 to bring. You can bring in like 2 or 3 of them before you get a price increase. And these guys are going to be devastating if they can get up here and get in to my Dolaim Men-at-Arms. So we're going to have to be careful. We see them coming up and we know exactly what they can do, but what we want is to move them into this area if at all possible. We want to get them stuck in here, stuck in melee with a flanking charge, for example, by my Dolaim Men-at-Arms, before they can get either into my Men-at-Arms or into these pikemen, which would be even worse. These pikemen are extremely vulnerable to javelin fire. It would definitely be a much more devastating impact for those javelins if they were to get into the pike. So that's something we want to avoid, and we're going to do our very best to see that it's done. We're going to fast forward it just a little bit here. The Balkov tribesmen slowly but surely moving forward, and it looks like they're trying to form up and go for my Dolaim Men-at-Arms. So what I'm going to do... Yeah, check this out. They're getting a little bit too close, as they have to do, given that they are javelins, but they've got no support. It'd be very, very easy for these guys to get swamped by infantry or cavalry or that sort of thing. It doesn't look like they're terribly afraid of my dueling with men-at-arms at this point. I don't know if they see them or what's going on here, but there's some flanking fire coming in from my tier there marksman. At the same time, I'm moving forward with a single unit of dueling with men-at-arms, and I've actually moved up my reserves to cover the hole left in them in case Rune tries to take advantage of that. These Balcott tribesmen realize the pickle that they have gotten themselves into. Dale is going to move in, hold them in place with his cavalry, his 6 cavalrymen left in that Dalian Light Cavalry unit, or 4 rather, which is going to give my dueling with men-at-arms the opportunity to get into the rear of these Balcott tribesmen. Great teamwork here. We are going to catch them. And you can see, it looks like some bodyguards, in fact, from Arnor moving in, trying to gun down my dueling with men-at-arms with a brutal downhill charge. I'm going to countercharge, attack them very quickly. You can see Exomar Tot coming out of nowhere with his Rohan Royal Guard, smashing in to these Balcott tribesmen, which is going to present a menace to the rear of these bodyguards, rather, and oblige them to retreat, not wanting to get surrounded. Yes, that was some very nice teamwork there from both of my teammates. Managed to eliminate one of those fairly high-value targets, Balcott tribesmen, I think now down to about a third of their original fighting strength. So far, so good for the attacking forces. We've done a great job at maneuvering our troops and baiting our enemies into making mistakes. What's going on over here? Looks like a strange little sally from some of the Rohirrim infantry. I think Exomar Tot was thinking about moving his infantry over here to give us a hand, but instead, I think Man of Wanway called him back because he's getting ready to prepare an assault on this area, and those infantrymen are definitely going to be needed. There is a bit of a problem here for Exomar Tot in that he's gotten his infantrymen way too close to that far bank. You can see the Arnorian archers now beginning to open up on them. These guys, they can stand up to Arnorian archers, but if that was any other archer unit in the game, this would be a problem. He would lose probably a few hundred of his infantrymen there in something of a misstep. Moving on back over here, things have started to cool down just a little bit. It's now devolved back into a skirmishing phase. Well, it looks like those Dalian cavalry are just not done yet. You can see this one man chilling out here, just watching this line. Exomar Tot has charged what remains of his royal guard, rather, into the front of these Lokam Rim, who are going to quickly see them off. I think he might have been going after the Loknar Rim in behind them. But at the moment, we're content to just sit at the bottom of the hill and bombard this position. It's just thick with runic troops and with Umbar troops, so it's not easy for our archers to miss, so we can really do a lot of damage to this flank here just by concentrating our missile fire. Speaking of, I got my tier there, marksmen now working in on this main battle line from Umbar. See them firing at those Arnorian archers, but inevitably they're going to hit some of the Belgier spearmen, the Belgier halberds rather. You can see some light casualties have gone into that unit to the tune of about 8 individuals. Yeah, not too much damage being done there because I only have the 1 archer unit, but they're also soaking up a lot of fire, and you can see like they're taking massed volley fire now from like 2 or 3 units, and I've only lost I think maybe 1 or 2. Yeah, 1 just went down right there. These guys can stand up to missile fire for a very long time, and they're very good. They're very good sponges in that way. Looks like some action over here. Rohan moving in first. This is probably the best thing that they can do. You don't want to lose Isengard's more formidable infantry force if you can kind of use up some of Rune's infantry on and their fatigue as well on units of lesser power like the Airling Swordsman and the Axemen and things like that. So not a bad choice, but I think we're going to start to see another front open up over there now, which is a good thing, because otherwise these two factions can just keep peeling off forces and keep kind of blunting our assaults and things like that. We can keep this assault going up for a while, but Arnor's already got a lot of reinforcements over here, and we don't want to see too much more, otherwise we may find ourselves overwhelmed. So it's a good thing that my allies are moving in right now to begin to lock down the rest of these defending armies. Let's see what's going on over here. It looks like a sally forward by Dale. I think a lot of his archers here are now out of ammunition. He's moving them forward, trying to catch those Loknar Rim. We're actually fleeing in the face of longbowmen, of all things. These guys are really lightly armored. They're terrible in melee. I think he just doesn't want. I think he just doesn't want to lose fatigue and lose like a few numbers on a throwaway unit like this that otherwise won't be able to do anything to this Lokam Rim. But still, more and more archer fire going in. I wonder if these guys. Oh man, if they have ammunition left, I will be very impressed. That's ballsy. Walking right up to the enemy like this and just just firing point blank into them. I don't think they do, though. I think they're about to get charged in the front by some low Gamp Rim who are just sick of their presence up here on the field. And you can see some Longbowmen moving in to some more Longbowmen and some Lake Town Bowmen moving in to try and hold down this unit. I think Boris has a plan with this, though. Yeah, you can see those Longbowmen now beginning to fall back in the face of that assault. It's not going to be an easy fight for them. But the retreat of those Longbowmen, the feint is going to oblige these Spearmen to start to move forward and allow him a little bit of time to regroup and reform. Let's go ahead and let's fast forward just a tiny bit here. I know Boris has something sneaky planned with those archers. We may have to come back to that a little bit later. Elsewhere, I've moved in a couple units of my Tier 3 marksmen, 2 of my 3 Tier 3 marksmen. I'm beginning to just bombard this low Gamp Rim spear position. Actually, no, I'm going for the archers in behind them, which is probably a better target in any case. You can see them just so bunched up here. Very easy for my archers to reap a terrible and bloody toll, and indeed they are. Low Gamp Rim now moving in, trying to push the lines a little bit here. If they can break through these bowmen, they can get in to my Tier 3 marksmen and start to disrupt our skirmish lines. It's not a bad idea. Boris, however, is prepared. He has now moved in his archers and attacking from 3 different directions to surround those low Gamp Rim. This is a bad thing for a unit like this. From the front, they could take these archers no problem, but these guys rely on their formation in order to keep themselves alive. You can see some casualties now beginning to go in to those low Gamp Rim. These are casualties that they don't really need to take, especially to the light archer units like this. Arnor now sees a gap. He's going to move forward, try and take on my Tier 3 marksman. At the same time, though, Dale is moving forward with his pikemen. This is a really nicely coordinated push here. Dale also moving in with his earls on the flank. That would not be an easy fight for those bodyguards, and Samwise doesn't want to lose his cavalry or take any casualties because they're going to need it over on this end because they have so few due to the disaster that befell their allies earlier. Elsewhere, you can see a big, slow down in fact, there's a lot going on. You can see a big general push from Rune moving in with his Loke Flag Rim. They're doing a number on my Dueling Rothman arms. Like I said, these guys are great at smashing through medium non-elite infantry. I'm going to move in with another unit of Dueling Rothman arms, moving forward as well to check the advance of these Clan Guard, not wanting to let them break through my lines and get myself surrounded. I've also brought in some reinforcements as well in the form of my Talon Knights. Actually, I think I missed these guys too. I'm sorry, I was so lax on the army compositions today, but there's a lot to go through. In any case, these guys are 3 HP heavy infantry. They've got a lot of damage and a lot of defense as well. They're going to be very important in the engagements to come because you can see, look at this. They're moving in with the Harbingers of Castamere. I mentioned these guys earlier. Very, very scary, high damage unit. Got some Belliger footmen moving in to give them a little bit extra numbers. It's just a general massive push here from Rune coming through these trees towards my lines. And I can see this happening, and I'm kind of panicking a little bit because I was not expecting them to suddenly sally forward like that. So that's a great thing that they're doing right now, kind of taking me off guard. You can see I'm just struggling to kind of get my men into formation, into a formation that I find acceptable to check this advance from Umbar. I got my Dueling Rothman arms here forming themselves up. I think they might be trying to shuffle into a shield wall formation. So I'm trying to get my Tarnostian Guard out of there because they will get slaughtered by these guys. There's no point in these guys being in that fight on the front lines. They will just die and will leave a big hole in my line and potentially panic the rest of my troops. So I've fallen them back, trying to use them as a reserve force. Elsewhere, I'm going to commit my Tier 3 marksmen to the fight because they're out of ammunition, and I really don't have a whole lot of options here. I've got my Tarnostian Guard or my Haven Guard that I can throw in there, and I don't want them to be on the front lines against these monstrous infantry either. Got my Nimrodel Rangers. I'm trying to fall them back a little bit of shenanigans here with the pathfinding, but these guys are going to slowly begin to fall themselves back and away from that battle line. I'm also moving up with my cavalry, thinking maybe it might be a good idea to come in and try some hammer and anvil strikes, but I need to wait for Umbar to fully commit in order for that to work. Samwise, though, is not going to let me do that so easily. They're moving in hard now on this flank, supporting their runic allies with some Arnor men-at-arms and his Knights of Numinos. His Knights of Numinos are quite strong. I think they're actually better than my White Knights in a straight fight. Despite the lower numbers, these guys will come out on top, and I don't want to lose this important cavalry unit because actually it's where my general is hanging out. See, I'm moving in with my Dueling Rothman arms, trying to plug in that gap. I've also got some Tarnostian Guard over there just for the sheer numbers of it, and some more reserves coming up, slowly shuffling forward in shield wall as well. Let's take a look at how my ally Dale over here is doing. Not so great. You can see his front lines kind of got smashed here. Those poor bowmen. They managed to do a lot of damage to these Loki Gamp Rim, much more than I would have thought, but they've now been smashed in the rear by those Knights of ANDUIN. Got some Dale Earls down here. Arnor has now moved forward with a ton of spearmen. Dale's going to want to get out of there as quickly as possible. That's a lot of spears, and they are all 2 HP. It's not a fight that he can possibly win. Elsewhere, the slow advance of Arnor, however, and the fact that he kind of dilly-dallied a little bit over here to go into the backs of archers that were probably going to lose that fight anyway, has given Dale time to form up. You can see the Elder Avari pikemen here arranged both on the flank and in the center to hold down this area. Also got some more Lake Town pikemen, and some of my Dolium men at arms have actually managed to form a contiguous line with my ally here. This is a little bit of a mistake, I think, on the part of Boris Beely's now moving in with Lake Town pikemen, which opens a very significant gap in our line. Although at the very least, we've got some reserves here that we can use to fill it in. There's so many units now moving forward. Arnor moving in with the rest of his men at arms, and some of his Arnor archers who are actually out of ammunition. Some more fodder units over here looking to support Rune and potentially begin to establish a proper battle line over here with my forces and with that of Boris Beetle. Oh man, the Loke Flag Rim here starting to punch through my Dolium men at arms. They've managed to expose my flank, which is going to allow some Loke Scion Rim to get through here. Not necessarily the best thing to charge into the backs of the lines, but you know what? Take what you can get. These Scion Rim are really hardy, very difficult to dislodge, and I think I've actually had to commit my Haven Guard to the fight at this point, alongside my Talon Knights, to hold back the advance of the Casimir Chosen. So I have no more elites to throw at these guys and surround them. All I've got is Tarnostian Guard and a few men at arms here who have pulled themselves off from the main engagement. Elsewhere, I've had to use the rest of my reserves to form a line against these incoming Belgier halberds to prevent the Warlords of Umbar, and I believe the Knights of ANDUIN who are still over here, yes indeed they are, from getting around my formation and hammer and anviling my line. If they pulled that off, it would be awful. My lines would fall apart. So I need to defend this flank essentially at all costs. Down here, I've got my Nimmerdale Rangers firing into the flank of these Belgier footmen. I can see that they're winning and that my men at arms are really struggling and are now down to just a few units left in there. 47, in fact, in that unit. I need to fire into these guys, into the flank, try and prevent them from breaking through here, potentially opening a gap that they can use to flood some elite infantry through and re-establish control of my front lines. But I think there's some craziness going on over here. In fact, I think we missed a little bit of it. Rohan has moved in, taken down a few of some of these Lokamp Rim and other runic heavy infantry. In fact, I think some of the infantry from Pasternak is here, so he's actually supporting his runic ally. Hard to tell them apart, they all kind of look the same to me. In any case, Runic Swift Base here under Woodhouse have now formed the second line of defense. You can see some Kalinard on Knights and Rohan Nobles charging into battle here. This is going to be brutal. This is a nice coordinated push. These Dunlending veterans, as I said, are strong against infantry, strong against armored infantry in particular. They will smash apart these Swiftblades. At the same time, the Kalinard Knights and Rohan Nobles charging into one area altogether, just trying to break through that line with this massive fist of cavalry, and they've done a great job at it so far. Look at those Runic Swiftblades, now overwhelmed, breaking, although at least they are fighting to the death, which is going to oblige Rune to respond in kind with his Camel's Dragon Knights. We're going to charge into the flank of these Rohan Nobles and the Kalinard Knights. Excuse me. The Kalinard Knights trying to get a piece of these clan crossbows, probably one of the more devastating portions of this defense. They can't just let their infantry be shot very easily by those AP infantry. They would essentially expend their entire army here, trying to break through the first few lines with that constant crossbow fire before they manage to really affect any sort of breakthrough. So looking to avoid that, XMR Tot charging in there, now actually charging right through the Dragon Knights, disrupting this whole line, just being absolutely a terror in the back lines, and trying to take down some of these important units. Looks like they're kind of going to be pinned in place, though. You can see some dismounted Dunedain Knights, 2 units of them in fact, now charging out of the forest, looking to pin these Rohirrim cavalry in place. Elsewhere though, oh man, these Dragon Knights are just getting butchered. You can see just how strong those Kalinard Knights are. Yeah, they've absolutely devastated that cavalry unit. I think it's the Runic General in there too, so Woodhouse needs to be careful. XMR Tot going to try and skirt away. He's right on the border of the map now. There's nowhere for him to go. He can't go over this red line. He's going to try and scoot around the formation of Samwise the Brave and get away from those Dunedain Knights. And the Loxiam Rin, who are coming in the back as well. So now, this is really important. The attacking forces have cavalry in behind the defending armies. This is very big. Not only are the defenders not going to be able to commit their full strength to the choke points, they're going to have to be constantly on alert for any incoming hammer and anvil strikes. Moving on back to the front lines, you can see these Dunlending veterans doing a great job against these runic Swiftblades. The Swiftblades, as I mentioned, are just kind of a throwaway infantry. They only cost about 500 to bring, so they are not going to be able to stand up to AP infantry like this for very long. Especially now that they don't have crossbow support and things like that. Man of One Way now moving in with his second unit of, or maybe even a third unit of Dunlending veterans, looking to exploit this gap in the runic line. In the meantime, you can see some archer fire coming in, probably from the crossbows right there, gunning down these low camp rim, weakening this reserve unit. This is going to be important. The lines are already very thin, and now the reserves are starting to thin out. This is a big problem for the runic player, but we're going to come back to this in just a moment. There's a lot of action going on over here as well. These Dolaimrath men-at-arms pushing these Scion Rim hard, managing to get into the flank of these Scion Rim and actually destroying a unit of Arnar men-at-arms at the same time, almost putting them on the verge of routing. Tarnastian Guard not going to win that fight, but as I said, good for their numbers. They can hold for a little while. So we can see a unit of Belgier Halberds here have managed to break through. My poor Tarnastian Guard just got butchered by these units. I'm firing my Nirmaldal Rangers into them, trying to drive these guys back. There's also some Warlords of Umbar now in behind my position, and there's a lot of heavy infantry here. Very, very strong heavy infantry like the Casimir's Chosen. I honestly thought that I had lost the fight at this point. There's so much infantry just pouring in here. I don't have any more reserves to help me deal with them. But luckily for me, Dale has brought in his Dragon Slayers and is targeting that general unit, preventing them from launching any more hammer and anvil strikes. But I honestly thought I was doomed at this point, given the presence of these Umbar forces. And the fact that they have reinforcements coming in. Pasternak now moving in with his Clan Guard. It's going to be a tough fight to try and drive these guys back. Elsewhere, though, at least in the center, I'm not doing too badly. Boris has actually brought in his Swordmasters, which is saving my hide at this point. They're driving back this Belgier Footmen and actually beating the Harbingers of Castamere as well, given the presence of all of my elite units on this particular section of line. I've got my Haven Guard in there, and I've got my Talon Knights. We're really starting to put the hurt on the Umbar units. Oh, nice big hammer and anvil charge going into the rear of these Casimir's Chosen. This is huge. Those Casimir's Chosen are so healthy at this point, and really we don't have anything to deal with them. So if he can inflict massive casualties on these guys before they can actually get themselves behind my lines, then that is going to be a saving grace. We're going to go ahead and we're going to speed it up a little bit there. Boris now trying to pull out of there, trying to get as far away from those Casimir Chosen as he can, because they are just monsters in melee. But thank Eru for these Earls, because they have really saved my battle line at this point. See them now wheeling around for another charge. Let's speed it up. And there goes the Umbar General getting cut down by my White Knights. He tried to hit me in the rear again, supporting his cavalry with those Belgier Halberds, which is a good idea, but I managed to get in there and cut down his general. Big charge into the rear of those Belgier Footmen, which is going to allow these Dale Swordmasters to wrap around the rest of these infantry. The Casimir's Harbingers will fight forever, but some of the Belgier units and other lesser trained units are beginning to flee from the battlefield, leaving these poor elites very, very isolated and in a bad way. Over here, those Casimir's Chosen, alongside the Belgier Halberds, struggling to deal with the rest of my Dolaimrath men-at-arms while being hammer and anvil. Look at these Casimir's Chosen. They were at full health just a moment ago. Boris has really turned the tide of this battle in favor of the attackers, simply with those two units of cavalry. See, those Casimir's Chosen are trying to go after the far unit of Earls, who are going to scoot away just in time. Some of them may get caught. I think we might see them get cut down. Another rear charge coming in from those Earls, rather. My bad. This is really nice coordination on the part of Boris Beal. He's just ripping these Casimir's Chosen apart. Let's be careful. I was getting a little bit close, I think, to those stakes there. Let's go ahead and let's move back over here and see how the forces of Isengard are dealing with this deadly choke point. Quite well by the looks of it. Looks like some of these crossbows now out of ammunition, moving forward to try and support the push here from the Trolls and the Wardens of Dunland. They've managed to force their way almost to the other side of the river, so it looks like the attacking forces may be able to get the foothold that they need to prevent themselves from being just shot down like goats. Although Rune has now reformed with its skirmish lines, clan crossbows just raining hell down upon the attackers. Some Low-Flight Rim now moving forward, trying to hold down this line. You can see the runic lines are still beginning to fall apart. They've got a lot of missiles up here. They've still got a fair amount of reserves in the form of these Camel Chosen, for example, the Low-Camp Rim, and some Scion Rim, but things looking a little bit grim for them, I think. Oh, there goes one of the runic generals. I don't know what just happened there. Let's take a look. Let's actually, we'll slow it down just a little bit. I think that that cavalry in the back is just being an absolute nightmare. Man, I don't know where they've gone. Perhaps it's over here. Nope, that's me. Yeah, I don't know what they just did. Yeah, I got no idea what happened, guys. But apparently one of the runic generals has just died.
They have lost half their men.
Over on this end, I'm moving in now with some of my my tier 3 marksmen. We're just trying to surround and destroy these units piecemeal. These guys are a big problem, though. In fact, I think my white knights have been gunned down by these very stealthy Dunedain units. These are the Troll Slayers, and they are right here. They have very limited ammunition, but you can take 2 of them for 900 florins a piece for about a grand total of 1,800. They're actually getting nerfed because they are so strong in melee. They've got like 32 AP damage and like 40 defense, 31 of which is their melee defense. So they are actually some of the best shock troops in the game who also have AP missiles. So they will be getting toned down in the future, but for the time being, they're complete monsters. They're going to be able to help their runic ally out of this encirclement just by bludgeoning my troops to death with their sheer stats. Elsewhere, we've managed to destroy most of the runic forces. You can see Umbar moving in with some Corsair Savages and some more Dunedain Troll Slayers moving in to support them as well. Wait until you see what these guys can do. There's a lot of our units still here. They are mostly quite tired, but we've got some Dale Swordmasters in there who are no slouches in combat. Looks like those Corsair Savages moving in to try and support these dismounted Arthurine Knights against my Dueling Men-at-Arms. My Nimrod Rangers now out of ammunition completely, moving in to try and hold down this flank. Actually, I think these Corsair Savages just turned around and are now rear-charging my Dueling Men-at-Arms. And at the same time, these Troll Slayers are butchering our troops. Even though they are fighting in the front of pikes backed up by Swordmasters, these guys are still too much for the Dalish forces. So this is kind of a turning point in the battle for Umbar. At this point, they've really been on the back foot for most of the battle, but now they're starting to pull things back with the addition of those Troll Slayers and indeed the Shadow Guard, who are starting to roll up my lines and defeat my tier 3 marksmen and fight their way out of that encirclement. Elsewhere, my tier 3 marksmen in a fight against yet more Troll Slayers. These guys are just everywhere. I think they broke off from this engagement, seeing that it was basically a one fight for their side anyway, and are now trying to silence my archers, and they are just slaughtering these guys. Despite the fact that they are surrounded and being attacked by heavy infantry, they are doing a lot of work. Elsewhere, I've got some Ambrazani Nardubawib who moved in to potentially start to shoot into the back either of my tier 3 marksmen or move in melee and trap them between the Troll Slayers and potentially those Beligear archers. Actually, never mind. These Beligear archers now pulling off, trying to surround my tier 3 marksmen and what remains of my troops. So Rune has managed to win this flank, except for this one engagement over here. Yeah, we need to be able to break through Umbar and reform a line in order to deal with this new push, because we're in a lot of trouble right now. We're losing a lot of our infantry that came through the battle that we managed to preserve so carefully through the entirety of this massive scrap over here, even against some of the more powerful Umbar units. Now this is our flank is being turned by the presence of these Troll Slayers and some reinforcements as well in the form of these Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen. Yeah, not looking like an easy fight over here at all. We're slowly but surely beating down the rest of the Umbar infantry, and we'll be able to potentially reform, take our assailants between the hammer and the anvil by attacking them from both sides. But yeah, we've definitely got our work cut out for us. Okay, we'll switch over to the runic side in just a second. I want to see these Dragon Slayers charge into combat with those massive, absurdly large swords. Yeah, those Beligear archers don't want none of that. They're going to flee as quickly as possible. Same time, Rune now moving in to try and fill that gap. But let's move back over here and see how things are going. It looks like the assault of our allies has kind of stalled out a little bit here. Oh, there goes my general, cut down by some Camel Shadow Guard and some fencers. But the assault from our allies really seems to have stalled out here. It's been just a grueling battle. Look at this. Look at this destruction all the way across. Juan has now had to commit some of his elites to the fight, but they're being shot down by those crossbows in the back. As I said earlier, these guys are so vulnerable to missile fire. You don't want to get them shot by crossbows of all things, which generally have a lot of damage behind them. Yeah, this half-orc spear guard ends The rest of the Isengard forces here are not going to be able to stand up to this for too much longer. A renewed push from Rune has given the defending forces hope. Some crossbows now being committed to the fight. Bit of almost a desperation play on the form of one. I don't know how much army they've got left. Actually, no, they're looking pretty solid at this point. Maybe I spoke a little bit too soon. Still got some Nazgai, still got pikemen, still got Royal Guard as well, and some Snogger skirmishers. So this fight has only just begun. I think Rune has had to commit almost everything as well. Most of Arnor's forces are still elsewhere on the battlefield. So this is not looking good for them. Their best chance here, I think, is to get this trebuchet going and try and murder some of these blobbed up troops. But yeah, they're looking like they're in a lot of trouble over there. Speaking of trouble, we have managed to get ourselves out of the pit a little bit. You can see us now beating back the Scion Rim. Most of the Umbar infantry has now been defeated at this point. We just have to deal with these Troll Slayers who are still hacking their way through all of these Dalish forces. Look at the damage that this archer unit has caused in melee. These guys are so strong. There's 2 units of them, in fact, in there that have now come from the rear and have taken these Lake Town bowmen, essentially between the hammer and the hammer. Elsewhere, I've got my dual aircraft man-at-arms fighting hard. The loss of their general is not really great for them. It's kind of weighing on their fighting spirit, and they're actually thinking about routing. That would be a big problem, especially against these Dragon's Wrath guildsmen. That is, yeah, that could potentially pose a very, very big issue for us because of how strong these units are, even when surrounded. And again, more Umbar infantry here, and these 2 units of Troll Slayers still looking really healthy. I mean, it doesn't look like it with the surround going on here, but there is still a chance for them, I think, because most of our units are so very tired. Yeah, those Troll Slayers are only just tired. They've only like just switched over from being tired. So yeah, this is not going to be an easy fight by any means. Dale now moving in with the Savari pikemen, supporting them with a block of Lake Town pikes and some Barding herd, trying to just surround these guys, hit them on all sides. At the same time, I'm moving in from the other end with my Haven Guard, looking to get into those Camel Shadow Guard, those Dragon's Wrath Guildsmen, or those Troll Slayers. I want revenge. I hate these Troll Slayers, man. They have caused me a lot of problems in a lot of different games, so I'm going to try and get in there and take them out if at all possible, which it looks like I'm trying to do, in fact. Big charge here from these very tired Haven Guard into these Troll Slayers, who are now giving the business to the Dragon Slayers of Dale of all things. Like, we've really had to commit to take these guys out, and you can see why they're going to get changed in the future, because they're so good. Yeah, the Haven Guard maybe is going to be what we need to tip the favor, or the scales in our favor, rather. Let's slow down just a little bit here and just look at the devastation. Look at the mess this is. This is essentially the destruction of like 4 armies and elements from a 5th. Like, this is just brutal, especially over here in this wooded area. Just disgusting. But we have managed to wipe out our enemies for the most part. These Troll Slayers now being surrounded, beaten down by Haven Guard, by Dragon Slayers, and everything under the sun. We just want to get these guys off the field. And that's essentially it for the defending armies here, which is going to leave us free to move forward with what remains of our cavalry. It looks like the Kalinardon Knights went on some like epic saga apparently, and killed the general unit. I guess that was all going on back here. Maybe even killed some Knights of Numinos as well, potentially protecting our troops over here. But yeah, I didn't even see what they did. But now they're free to move in to the back lines of the defending forces. Really nothing that these guys have left. It's a very small unit of Clan Hunters there for Pasternak. And Smarner's forces, I think, have been expended as well, trying to beat these guys back. Isengard's still struggling to get across here, but with our victory over on the other river crossing, we're going to be able to move in as quickly as our exhausted legs will allow us to move into the rear and support our allies. Looks like one of the players has admitted defeat. I'm not sure which one it was. It was probably one of the Runic players from earlier who didn't really have an army left. We got some Valgot tribesmen up here. Oh, I gotta be careful. They're actually throwing it into their own troops. Don't want to have that happen. This Royal Guard alongside the high mass of the Isengard pikes is actually beginning to make this Runic line here bulge, and that's not being helped by those javelins whatsoever who are throwing their payloads into the rear of their own comrades. Campbell's Chosen now being obliged to move in. This is the best of the best. And when I shoot these guys in the back with javelins, be careful there. This flank's still holding. What do you know? This little Gamp Rim Spearman can hold for a really long time against units like this. From the front, like I said, they can cause a lot of devastation. So Snaga Skirmishers now moving in, I think, to pepper this kind of free portion of the line and try and kill as many of these Gamp Rim as possible. They might be going for the Camel's Chosen, actually, which is a bit of a risky prospect. Oh, that was a nice volley, though. There was some friendly fire there, but that was straight into the face of those Royal Guard. Ooh. I don't think these guys have too much more ammunition left, though. Still hitting some of their own Camel's Chosen. These guys have died a lot faster than they should have. Yeah, things not looking good for the defenders right here. Let's see what's going on. I think we've mopped up essentially everyone. We can see another admit defeat there. That is probably the forces of Umbar and Rune have now admitted defeat, leaving their armies free to rout off the battlefield because we have no more attention for them. We're trying to get over here, get into the rear, and try and save our allies. Actually, Arnor still got a reasonable infantry force here. These 2 units of Dunedain Knights fresh from the battlefield. I think they might be more than enough to hold up our allies here, and maybe even beat what they have left, because I think all the infantry that's left is just that of Man of Wanwei. He's got his Nazgai bodyguard, and I think he's got his Nazgai over here. Maybe it would be enough on their own, alongside these Berserkers as well. Yeah, I think they'd be okay. Some Marshals of the Red moving forward. Heavy shock troops. This is basically GG for the defenders at this point. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to fast forward just a little bit and witness the final stand of Rune, Arnor, and what remains of their armies. Oh man, some knights here charging into those crossbows. You can see those very flashy, it's like a white phosphorus projectile almost, going into those Kalinardon knights. Those knights now retreating, not wanting to get encircled, but I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of choice in the matter. You can see them now almost pinned against the riverbed. Smartat now maneuvering them around to the other side, somehow managing to escape that encirclement. Very impressive. Dunedain Knights charging into battle against these pikes and these Marshals of the Red, even though these Marshals of the Red are quite strong on the charge, and both these units, I believe, have 2 HP. The Dunedain Knights are just far and away superior. Actually, no, that's wrong. The Dunedain Knights have 3 HP, which is going to make them far and away in a different league from the Marshals of the Red. Oh man, those Dragon Wrath crossbows still have ammo. Let's see what they do. Probably into those Marshals of the Red, I would think. Ooh. Oh! That was brutal. Let's watch it again. Oh man, they're like ballista bolts. Like they go through everything and hit units in the back ranks. That's devastating. Camel's Chosen slowly but surely being driven back, although they have managed to stop the bulge in the line for the time being. The Royal Guard actually finding themselves a little bit surrounded now. Although luckily, the timely arrival of Dale, just as the defenders are starting to turn it around a little bit in their favor, Dale is now charged into the rear of those Camel's Chosen, annihilating them. Oh my goodness. Arnor and Rune are going to respond in kind, pinning those Earls against their own forces and the riverbeds. These Earls are essentially completely screwed. They're going to try and get out of there. I just don't know if they're going to be able to do it. Yeah, that's that hole they left there is going to allow these Dunedain Knights to move through and begin to put some more pressure on the attacking. This is their left wing. Elsewhere, the Camel Shadow Boats have been, or Camel Shadow Guard rather, have been redeployed to meet the advance of the Berserkers here, who are charging in just as the Marshals of the Red are starting to lose steam. Oh man, these dismounted Dunedain Knights fighting their hearts out. It's just not, they just don't have what it takes to fight both Marshals of the Red and the Berserkers at the same time, but they're being pelted by the Snaga Skirmishers in the back. Look at this! Look at this river crossing! This is an absurdity. It's just become a boneyard at this point. The death of a couple of armies in this this small compact area. Yeah, things not looking too bad for the defenders at this point. Although the attackers are slowly beginning to break through, and as victory is looking essentially certain, the rest of our forces, our infantry and such, begin to arrive. We've got my Nimrodal Rangers here, swiftly running across the field, looking to attack some of these Campbell Shadow Guard in the rear, maybe even get a piece of these Dragon's Wrath crossbowmen. ahead. We're going to speed up just a little bit further. And there goes the Runic General. Very, very bad for the Runic player, although I guess it doesn't really matter at this point. Their army has essentially been defeated. You can see some of these Balclaw tribesmen out of ammunition and running off the field straight into the waiting arms of these Dale Swordmasters. There will be no mercy shown for the men of the East on this day. Last stand here, the Camel Shadow Guard making a wall around these Dragon Wrath crossbows, who are now pulling out to try and prevent these Dale Swordmasters from charging into the rear of that formation. Not a bad idea, although these Swordmasters are a little bit tired. It might be hard for them to beat these crossbowmen. They are pretty strong in melee. It's looking a little bit even. Let's see what else is coming up. More pikes. We got some Barding Herd. I don't really have a lot of much of an army left at this point, so there's very, very few troops for me to send over. Got some Dale Dragon Slayers. The biggest thing, I think, is that my Haven Guard still have 56 of them. Yeah, most of my army is gone, and most of that is of Dale as well. The Swordmasters starting to pull it back a little bit. No, Woodhouse's Dragon Wrath crossbows. You can see just how strong these guys are. I don't know, it's hard to tell. It's even. But the attackers, Isengard and Rohan, have now broken through. You can see some Helm Hammerers now moving in as well. A little bit late to the party, guys, I think. But nonetheless, they're moving in to try and wipe out some of the survivors from the defenders. Yeah, this is a really tough fight for the defenders, especially as they weren't able to prevent those cavalry from getting into their back lines and running amok, and actually siling down one of their generals. Yeah, more Lake Town Pikes moving in here. But, yeah, Arnor just, I think, pulled off a little bit too many of their troops, and the lack of artillery on the defending side really was a big problem for them. They just couldn't shut down our artillery, and we could use that to our advantage. We could get them to bunch up by using cavalry, for example, or bowman units that they would want to attack, and when they move forward to kill them with cavalry or with infantry, then we open fire with our artillery pieces and just cause a whole lot of damage. So the skirmish fight, I think, at least on our side, was the decisive moment in this battle. So just look at that. Look at the numbers here. It's like 5... It's like, yeah, like 8 or so thousand on each side. It's a very big battle. Let's take a look at some of the casualties. Most of the killing power really came from my archer units, actually. See my tier 3 marksmen doing really well. 222 on my Nurmaldel Rangers. My Trebuchet getting 214. My heavy infantry not doing all that well. Some of my Dilemma Men at Arms did okay. My Talon Knights got 153, which is respectable. And what did my Haven Guard get? Only 106. That's a little bit less than you'd expect from the Haven Guard, but they were fighting some pretty high-value units. But yeah, that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. Coming up next, there's going to be another Third Age replay, and there's going to be one coming out on the official channel as well, which I recommend you go and take a look at because it is so good. It's not a sub-commander battle, it's a faction battle, pitting the Orcs of Gundabad, who I think have like 12,000 or so orcs, something like that, against 6,000 elves. It's just gigantic, and it's one of the few battles I think I've seen of 4v4 on huge unit settings. So definitely make sure you go and check that out. But as for me, I've been JMonster. I hope you guys enjoy, and I will see you in the next replay. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye!